Anders.
Hey, Max.
How's it going?
I'm great.
It's nice to have you here today.
It's always good to be here. It's a beautiful day.
Hi, everybody. I'm Max Shank. This is my friend Anders Rubini. And today we are going to talk about the truth about fitness.
Yeah, exciting.
Very exciting. The reason I wanted to talk about this is because I think the most difficult thing for a person who is looking to get in shape, which is usually the mentality they have coming into it, is there are about, I don't know, hundreds of different myths that will sort of lead you down the wrong path before you even have a chance to begin. So I kind of call them like pre-mistakes. It's not that you made a mistake in what you were doing. Actually, what you did was great. It was you made a mistake in choosing that activity, usually. So first, let's talk about what fitness is. Since we're having a semantic discussion, we have to try to come up with the definition. The biological definition of fitness is just that it means you can procreate.
Yeah.
I think we want to do a little better than that, though.
Yeah. For me, fitness is a way of being ready for whatever life throws at you, whether that'll be chasing your kids around, picking something up from the ground, being able to walk for a long distance if your car breaks down or something like that, and just overall readiness. Yeah.
I think
From a physical perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I think, right.
Yeah.
We're not talking about mentally or psychologically yet or anything along those lines. I think the question is fit for what? So you bring up a really good point. So on that line of thinking, we would want to imagine that it's about what you are trying to be ready for. And then if we're assuming that that's the case, then we have to try to assign some sort of probability of what scenarios you may find yourself in. So it's kind of like hedging your risk in investing.
Yeah.
The same thing is so for what physical qualities you want to develop. And as you said, being able to walk for a really long distance is very nice. Being able to run or jump at all is really nice. And of course, at Ambition Athletics, we try to give people the most well-rounded set of skills.
Yeah.
So that it opens more doors in terms of what you are able to do.
Yeah, what you are able to do and how you interact with your environment, right? So if you're able to interact with everything around you, you're most likely going to be just moving more in general, which is all going to aid towards a overall healthier body.
Right. It reminds me of your concept of play vision. So when you're walking down the street and you see a bench or something, you don't just see a place to sit down because you are desperate to stop standing because it's painful. It's, can I jump on that? Can I balance on that? Maybe I can even hand balance on that.
Yeah.
And the whole concept of fitness is it's always contextual. It's always contextual on the scenario. It's always contextual on the environment. And I think one of the things that helps people the most is improving their relationship with the ground. So not only being able to move on like a horizontal plane, being able to move quickly, being able to change direction while planting on the ground and staying balanced, but also getting up and down off the floor. And I know that we use all kinds of different ways to get up and down off the floor as a way to not only evaluate how someone moves, but also improve the way that a person moves. And then you can take that a step further and take it into rolling and falling. And I know with your judo background, you guys have done tons of rolling. I do tons of rolling as an amateur just for the fun of it. And I think it goes back to what I've told people for a long time, which is your relationship with the ground is a good indicator of how soon you will be buried underneath it.
Yeah.
And they did that study in Brazil.
Yeah.
You remember?
The Brazilian get up study. Yeah.
Yeah, boy, a lot of people mentioned that particular study. And the concept was that the less difficulty you have, I'm paraphrasing here, the less difficulty you have rising up and down from the floor, the longer your lifespan will be, right?
Yeah.
And I would say that's generally true.
Yeah, generally speaking. There's of course always exceptions, and
Yeah, no
yeah.
question. So yeah, fit to interact with the ground well
Yeah.
is a big one. What else?
Fit to interact with others. I mentioned like playing with your kids, you know, having sex with your partner. All that is really nice to be fit for.
No kidding. And that goes right back to that biological definition too.
Yeah.
And I think the whole the whole concept of fitness is, what's the point of it? It's so you can not only have more years in your life, but more life in your years too. And I think that there are a lot of things, like you said, like making love, like being able to play, like being able to run and jump, and the zest of life just gets slowly diminished, and it's just not as fun. So being able to be there fully for the people that you care about is maybe one of the most important
Yeah.
reasons to be fit in the first place. It doesn't have to be ready for trouble, like being able to carry a human being out of a burning building, although I think that's certainly better to be able to than not be able to.
100%. But the chance of you getting there is very low. If it happens, it's really nice to be able to get out of that situation. But
So it's kind of like fitness insurance on the one hand,
you could see it that way, yeah.
and then the other hand is like fitness enjoyment. So it's like you want to be able to enjoy opportunities and quickly resolve emergencies. And that's kind of how I think about it. So I like to be able to play tennis and do jujitsu, and I'm a pretty active person. And of course, the more fit you are, the more options you have for activity. So the more
Exactly.
active you will be.
Yeah.
And that will, of course, have a big contribution to everything like that. But then on the other side, the readiness for emergencies, being able to carry a load is really valuable. Being able to run is really valuable. I just remember it, the experience really affected me. I remember I was in the airport when I was doing all that traveling, teaching seminars, and I saw this family running to their flight, and the dad was really overweight and he couldn't run, so he had to stop. And I'm like, these people are definitely going to miss their flight. And so the rest of his family was like running, and he was running at first, but then of course he had to stop. And I'm just thinking like, man, it feels so. I mean, I've been in a situation where you're like the weak link in like sport. I remember playing soccer growing up. You know, you're playing defense, and then someone just dribbles right past you, and you like are
Yeah.
totally beating yourself up afterward. So I know that the less physically capable you are, there are certain situations where it can like really
Yeah.
be quite harmful for the whole tribe.
For the whole tribe, exactly. So it's not only for yourself, it's for others as well. Yeah.
I think that is probably one of the better reasons to be fit in the first place, because it goes back to what we were talking about. It was like pre-mistakes. It's not wrong to want to be fit just for the pure sake of vanity, of course.
No.
You know, I think whatever mods you want to get on your body is great. But being able to be, as we talk about, pleasant and useful is so critical for fitness.
Yeah. Sure is. So what's the way to get there?
Fitness?
Yeah.
Well, we haven't really talked about body composition, but I think fitness is not a very good tool for body composition, except for the fact that you will want to be more active if you feel physically good. Because one chocolate chip will get you about 33 steps worth of energy. So I could eat a whole bag of chocolate chips before you make it around the block. So it's just not a very good strategy. But building muscle, building capacity is going to make you want to be more active. And then having a really powerful reason why you want to be fit is so good. So if it comes from a place of self-loathing, like you don't love yourself, but you think that, maybe if you look really good, you finally will, it seems like it's putting the cart before the horse a little bit. So you want to have a good reason why to stay in shape, but also understanding what abilities are really going to help you and what abilities are really not going to help you that much. And I think that, once again, part of the problem is the myths that people believe. They think that, a high intensity interval workout is going to solve all their problems just because it creates an energy deficit so that you will lose calories. But the concept of opportunity cost is way more important than that, because any amount of energy that you, like, let's just say, waste, you're not able to build the ability to carry things, easily get up and down off the floor, hang, climb, crawl around, roll, like we mentioned before, sprint, jump. And if you approach exercise from the standpoint of trying to waste energy, you're not going to be approaching it from a skill standpoint. So this whole myth where it's like, oh, how hard I work is what matters. But you and I know that that's not the case at all. Especially, part of the reason we have people push and pull the sled so much is the risk reward is very good. It's like almost no risk, but the reward is extremely good, and it's very easy to find that threshold while still maintaining a high level of skill, rather than just, flinging yourself at some task with all your energy where you maybe are losing your mechanics or something like that, or you're putting yourself in some unnecessary risk for fitness. So the concept of opportunity cost is probably the most important with fitness, because when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if someone is a yoga teacher, they're going to say yoga is the thing. If someone's a cycling teacher, they're going to say cycling is the path to fitness. But the reality is you got to really ask, like, okay, fit for what? And I don't know the probability that you're going to need to carry another human, but if it happens, it would obviously be a very dire situation. Or it's also just fun to be able to do things like acro yoga or carry a person up a hill or wrestling.
Yeah, and that's probably more important than anything, that whatever you decide to do is fun for you.
Yeah.
So you can work on having this big reason behind why you're doing something, but if you're not enjoying it, you should probably look around for something else.
I agree.
And I think we need to realize that there's nothing that we have to do. It kind of pisses me off. I maybe see it more in my group of people that I get content from. You have to be able to do a handstand, or you have to be able to do a Cossack squat, ass to grass. All of these things, you don't have to be able to do. If you think it's fun to work towards, it's a cool skill to have. But really, there's nothing we have to do. We have to realize what we want to be able to do, and then do it in a way that we think is fun. I've killed myself with so many hours of training trying to get a handstand, because I thought I had to do. Otherwise, I weren't a real mover.
Yeah, you're not cool. If you can't do that.
If you can't do a handstand or a backflip or
Totally. I think this is actually one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about Truth About Fitness today, because you and I talked about this specifically earlier this week, and of course we've had this type of conversation a million times. The reality is human beings are really good at thinking and talking and walking long distance. Our skeleton is upright, makes it easy to walk long distance. We have these huge brains, and we're really good at talking. But compared to other animals, we're very weak, we're very slow, we have no claws or poison pinchers or armor or anything like that. And the reality is, if you just want to live a good life, you could probably get away with just walking and being kind of active and not eating too much. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's I think the key part of this is there's nothing you have to do, right? You don't have to squat ass to grass. You don't have to do a handstand. You don't have to do gymnastics movements. You don't have to uh, do some special mobility exercise that some guru says you must do it or you're going to hurt yourself. Because the only reason people make those kind of claims is because it's a way for them to build their own authority.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, come take my test, and oh, by the way, if you can't do the test, I've got the cure for you. But the reality is, like, longevity is mostly about genetics, not eating too much, and being active enough that you are moving the energy through your body. You're moving blood, you're moving lymph, you're fully oxygenating, and you're fully expelling carbon dioxide, and also the social aspect of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're far better off not doing any hardcore exercising at all, just having a close group of friends, going for walks, maybe do a little tai chi, don't eat too much, and move around enough so that you're not becoming stagnant. And I think that as soon as you like idolize something, then you're going to end up sacrificing a lot for it. And I did the same thing in my own training, just like you. I mean, it's funny listening to you say, because I know I've done the same thing where I tried so hard to like do the thing and make the shape, and my body was giving me these signals like, this doesn't feel good, it doesn't feel right, but I just kept doing it anyway because I thought that's what you have to do. But the reality is, like, that's not the case at all. You don't have to lift weights to be healthy, but if you do, they can be awesome tools. And as much as I like body weight training only, there's a lot you can do with a kettlebell or a dumbbell that is like nearly impossible to replicate, even with a set of gymnastics rings, which really open a big menu of different exercises that you can do.
100%.
Yeah, so I think maybe, is that the most important thing? Is like recognizing you don't have to do anything,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of building up back from zero.
Yeah. Yeah, people are in this mindset of like chasing what's optimal or what's, the best way, instead of just doing what they think is fun and like paying attention to how it feels. Um, it's your journey. Same with nutrition, right? I can find 20 different people that are all doctors and very, very smart, and they'll have each their demon, that like gluten's the bad guy, or no, it's carbs that's the bad guy. No, it's fat that's the bad guy. And in my own experience, when I feel the best, kind of pay attention to what I eat and how I feel before, after, during, and see really great results from that.
I completely agree. I think part of there are so many factors, right? Because like you said, in order to elevate your authority, you have to create a devil of some kind or a demon. And then also, people have been conditioned to respect authority and obey authority. And it's actually much easier. Like, it's a lot less work if I just say, hey, nutrition coach Anders or Dr. Anders, I want to lose weight. Give me a meal plan. And it's so much easier for you to say, okay, at 7 a.m. you're going to eat 11 almonds, 1/2 of an apple, and a scoop of protein powder or a protein bar. And then at 11 a.m. you're going to eat this. And then at 1 p.m. you're going to eat this. And of course, it's easier for me and easier for you.
Way easier for the coach.
But it's definitely not good because it doesn't take into consideration any of the individual and unique differences of our gut microbiome, our genetic material, our heritage, which is basically part of the same thing. I mean, I always laugh thinking how whenever you are generally right, you're specifically wrong. So someone like me or you, I would say that we're pretty much Northern European. Right.
Yeah.
Not Southeast Asian.
Definitely not
Not
Southeast
South
Asian.
American. Isn't it most reasonable to assume that we're not going to thrive on the same type of a diet?
I would think so.
I would think so.
But I mean, I can't back it up with any studies that I've read, so it doesn't
Right.
matter, right?
Right. But I think that's also the point is um, there's no conclusion about nutrition because like you said, you have so many doctors who say perfect example is I think of like you have doctors who say avocados are good for you. You have doctors who say avocados are bad for you. You have doctors who say that collagen is the best protein. You have doctors who say that whey is the best protein. You have doctors who say you should never have any animal products whatsoever. And so, of course, there's no conclusive data to determine that. Probably the most conclusive data we have about food, above everything else, from what I've read, and I read a lot, is don't eat too much of whatever it is. And as long as you're allowing your body to uh, absorb the nutrients and then you're using those nutrients, macro and micronutrients, and then you keep that flow going, then you're not going to find yourself in a situation where you're making yourself ill from having too much, right? So is it like, the whole concept that sugar is evil is so insane because it's the preferred energy source for our cells. Glycolysis is literally like chopping up glucose. And our body's really good at basically turning anything into glucose. Like we can, we're really adaptable. So it kind of ties back into this concept of if someone is telling a story to you about humans are like weak and we must do it a certain way, you can almost guarantee they're full of it because the reality is like, how did we make it this far without, I mean, look, I know people died way more back then, but we were like using rocks to smash open bones and suck out the marrow, and we weren't cooking it either. We were literally just eating whatever we could. So the human body is way more complex than we realize. We only can measure a certain amount, right? There are certain nutrients that are only made in our guts. So we're dependent on our microbiome to make certain things. It's just the metabolites or the byproducts of certain bacteria in our guts that make some nutrients that are essential. And if you don't feed those things properly, it can be problematic. But our bodies are actually so good at adapting that maybe the best thing is a nice diversity of food. But you would also get people who would say the opposite is true, and maybe you should just take supplements and drink orange juice and collagen protein or something like that. And I don't know about what you think, but I think food is well, actually, I do know what you think about this. I think food is a lot more than just nutrients because there's the concept of sharing a meal with someone and breaking bread and the art and science of cooking. And so it's not just as simple as, have X, Y, and Z nutrients because we absorb things differently. I mean, even just the environment that you're... How do we end up talking about nutrition again? I guess it's fitness related.
Yeah.
But the environment that you're in when you're eating is going to affect the way that you digest things, right? If you're in a sympathetic or parasympathetic state, rest and digest or fight or flight, that's going to have a huge impact on the quality of your digestion, right?
100%.
So there are a lot of factors that go into whether a food is going to be healing for you or whether it's going to be like damaging for you. And the same thing is true with exercise. So you need to have some context. What is the situation like? And it's like, which ones are the bad exercises? And it's like there aren't any bad exercises. There are positions and sums of forces that a person can't handle. There are positions that are inefficient, right? So we talk about athletic performance is about maximum efficiency, and muscle building is probably about inefficiency
Yeah.
to a certain extent. I wouldn't generalize that far, but that's like at least a good starting point. If you're trying to build muscle, you probably want to put yourself at a mechanical disadvantage so that you can improve the mind muscle connection of that area. And you also have examples like the old time strongman Maxick, who just use isometrics
Yeah,
to build
just
his
flexing.
strength. So you can squeeze in different positions, and you don't really need anything to be fit and healthy, but you do need some sort of spark to get you going, and you need to have a belief that it'll be worthwhile. And that's what you need before you do anything, right? Is you need the belief that it is going to work out for you.
Yeah.
Because no one does anything without that.
True.
Same thing with nutrition, I suppose. I mean, if someone starts paying attention to what they eat, even if it's suboptimal, maybe we can expand on the word optimal a little bit too, because that's really tricky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, optimal.
What does optimal mean? Optimal fitness.
Yeah, optimal fitness. Well, we circle back to the question for a what, but as I see it, a lot of people are like very busy optimizing their training. They're trying to optimize their nutrition based on what everyone else around them says. So they read a article on T Nation about how to train optimally. They hear some podcast where someone tells you about how to eat optimally, and then they kind of forget about themselves and just like stopping up and saying, hey, how does this actually feel? Because it doesn't matter. Because that guy said it was optimal. And then they read the next article next week and change up their regimen based on that, rather than based on how did my session make me feel? How do I want to feel from my session? Do I want to be able to walk in the morning? Or don't I?
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it makes me think, and this is something I think about a lot, of course. The most important thing is to do a good experiment on yourself, because n equals 1 is really the only experiment that truly matters. We can get some good starting points with, okay, we had this many people do this for 4 or 6 or 8 weeks or whatever, and they saw this benefit. But ultimately, I think the optimal training is going to be some sort of combination of music and accounting. And I know that sounds very silly, but the accounting concept is related. It comes right from accountability, comes right from that same word. So what is measured is improved usually. So if you are clear on what is important to measure, which is very difficult to say, like what is important to measure, is deadlifting more weight the most important thing, or is running faster the most important thing? And if you do a program where your goal is to improve your deadlift, you're probably going to improve it. And if you do a program where your goal is to get faster, you'll probably get faster. But if you don't think about what the most important ways to measure are, that's why it's so important to be a good little scientist yourself and figure out, like, what am I really trying to achieve? And also, what's reasonable. And I think when you try to just mimic other people, and that's one of the hardest truths, is monkey see, monkey do. We just are trying to repeat what other people do. But we don't know the full story of how that other person got there. And a lot of times in fitness, we don't really take into consideration that it takes a long time for your body to adapt to certain things, especially if you're talking about bone and ligaments. It takes way longer than muscles. And that's why I believe that's why it's more common for people who do steroids to tear things, because the connective tissue takes less time, or it takes longer to develop, but the muscle grows very quickly. So they get these big muscles, and then they just basically tear stuff off the bone.
Yeah.
It could be related to other things as well, but it takes a while to build up to a handstand, let's say. And I think a handstand is probably like the best probably one of the best examples for what we're talking about, because the risk reward, if you are like the average person, is actually really bad, because there's a lot of load, there's a lot of force going through a very small area that's it's not originally designed to support load that way. It's much more designed to hang off of something. It's much more designed to carry something. So it's usually more of a tension kind of thing rather than a compression kind of thing. So when you are thinking like, oh, I want to do a handstand, and the reason is usually it's just like for ego. I think if it's for fun, then that's probably the only reason to do a handstand.
Yeah.
Because you can develop healthy shoulders without ever doing a handstand in your life.
100%.
Totally unnecessary. It's fun though. I like doing it, but not because it's necessary. So if you take that smallest area, like some of the smallest bones you got, and you put yourself in a position where there's a really good chance that you are going to be losing your balance and rolling over those certain areas, it's no surprise that so many people hurt themselves so quickly. But then again, it's kind of like the arms race between consumers and producers and marketers. So people are like, I want to do a handstand. So the handstand guru says, well, you better take my 4-week handstand plan. And then another guru goes, well, to hell with that guy. Take my 3-week handstand plan. And then it just kind of goes into this thing. And it's like, finally, here's like how to nail the perfect handstand in 1 hour. But once again, there's no context. And probably it's going to do more harm than good. And maybe it'll be fine for them too.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things we do so well at Ambition is that we really meet people where they're at, and then we also have a really good exercise selection. Like, we're not putting people in a situation where, a moment of loss of focus can be like a catastrophic problem.
No. And especially not if they haven't practiced it before.
Right.
Ideally in like a more private setting than a group class. I do experience with some of our classes where like I know, one person in here really, really likes and enjoys playing with handstands. All right, so when there is some sort of overhead pressing motion on the program and I know he's there,
right,
I'll be like, listen, if you just want to play with handstands, you can.
Right.
You don't have to do this like overhead press that I'm showing you that you dislike a lot.
Right.
If you really like doing handstands.
Right.
And just being like a guide for your clients or our members at classes is probably the best way we can help people find that fitness that they're looking for.
Yeah, I would agree. Being able to make those adjustments on the fly is probably one of the biggest values of having a coach. So there's like the micro adjustments and then the macro adjustments. Yeah. So macro meaning like, see what happened over the last month and you tally up the accounting. And then the micro is more like figuring out like whether to have, like you mentioned, is this person going to be more happy practicing their handstands or doing cartwheels or crawling, and is this person going to be better off doing a hollow bench press, which, a hollow bench press is going to give you a good training effect. You get the pecs and the shoulders great, and if someone doesn't have great overhead mobility or wrist mobility to begin with, you can always choose something that is appropriate. So it's balancing that music and accounting, because most people don't get like super excited about accounting. Some people do. And I mean, you and I know and have met people where their idea of training is just like, I'm going to biohack this. I'm going to eat every 2 hours and I'm going to weigh all my food and I'm going to regiment my exercise down to the rep. And maybe they don't even enjoy the process that much. They just really focus on the gains. And some people can do that, but it's probably such a small
Small
percentage of the
percentage, yeah.
population. So you need something to keep you excited, and you need a way to express yourself with what you're doing movement wise too. So having, not only having a big vision, like a dream, like I want to hike Mount Everest or something like that, or I want to be able to carry a sandbag for 1 mile, or I want to be able to keep up with my kids. I mean, there are so many good like reasons why, but finding that balance between art and science, I think, is really critical, and that's where a person is going to get close enough to optimal.
Yeah.
Close enough. Like you're never going to find optimal because you don't have all the information. You know, even if you have something that tracks your sleep and your blood pressure from moment to moment, and you have like one of those little widgets that's like measuring your blood glucose 24/7. I mean, that's one way to do it, but I think it's also good to just chill out a little bit and recognize that you can you can get like 90% of the way there by just having fun with your training and not biting off more than you can chew. Because what's so funny is once you take responsibility for it, instead of look to some authority figure to tell you, you must do this or you must not do this, you're also going to get something which I think is maybe even more valuable, which is you're going to get much better at listening to your body while you're doing certain things. And one of the things that made me so happy in class the other day when we were doing sled pushes is two of the ladies stopped before we were done.
Mm-hmm.
They were listening to their bodies. Like, I think that like knowing when to hold them and knowing when to fold them is so valuable. But if you take that personal responsibility and you recognize that fitness is a long game, fitness is not a short game, and you can get so much good adaptation with a frequent stimulus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't have to be Herschel Walker doing 1,000 push-ups and sit-ups every day, but even if you did 20 or 50 or 100 sprinkled throughout the day or all in one little set.
One set of as many as you can.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, something that I've thought about a lot is that high frequency training, because it's not just about the physical adaptation you get from it. It's also about having a foundation or a keystone to the way that you live your life. Because I mean, I've had tons and tons of injuries. I can't think of a body part that I haven't injured at some point. And I know that if I do a little workout in the morning, I feel better. No question. And, you know, I'm playing tennis, I'm sprinting, I'm jumping, I'm doing some low grade, like flipping gymnastics type of things. But I'm not hammering it hard, but I notice that the more consistent I am, the better the flow of the day goes too.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be very long, and you don't have to do anything specific, but you do develop this habit of listening to your body and evaluating, where am I feeling tension, where can I use some extra strength or stability. And I think just a little bit of movement and a little bit of squeezing can go a really long way if you jack up the frequency of it. And I think rather than warming up, you know, like this big long protracted warm up, the idea of just kind of staying loose or staying warm throughout the day. And once again, we don't really know like exactly how beneficial that will be for somebody, but we do know that lymph, for example, doesn't have a pump, so it gets moved around by your body moving. And so on the one hand, someone might say, oh yeah, you want to deadlift once a week, but deadlift very, very heavy, and then you want to just be resting the whole rest of that time. And whether that's optimal or not, it doesn't really consider the big picture. So it becomes kind of like tunnel vision on one variable. But how fit you are or how healthy you are is not just one variable. So being too tied to like measuring one thing, I think is really dangerous too.
Mm.
And I noticed it in kettlebell training. I think that was like the easiest example that I've ever noticed. And at first, I just bought along with it too, because I was taking courses, teaching tons of courses, and for some reason, how much you could one arm overhead press was correlated with how much of a man you were. Now, granted, none of these people could carry a body weight sandbag 400 meters, but I don't think that's necessarily the right measurement either. But as soon as you measure one thing like that, I watch people like sacrifice their shoulders chasing this, half body weight overhead press or something like that. And, knowing what I know now, they didn't really have very strong and healthy shoulders to begin with. So they're like chasing this external thing that actually is doing them much more harm than good. And for what? So someone will like them a little bit better?
The kettlebell community is like probably right there with the CrossFit community of just really enjoying suffering as well. And think that that's kind of the only way to get there. It's a way to get fit. I wouldn't do it. I mean, I enjoy suffering for very short periods of time and then enjoying the rest of my life. But
Right. Well, or it's like I remember I was at a seminar where they were teaching some of the barbell stuff, and someone was bragging that he couldn't get full depth in his squat unless he had 225 on his back.
yeah,
And
a weird brag.
yeah, it's a weird brag, right? But I think the whole reason I bring all that up is you just have to be aware of like what you might be sacrificing and for what you're like really getting out of it. Because I think a lot of people make these decisions very uninformed, and they don't think about the cost in the immediate future and then further down the road. You still see people sacrificing their body to lift more weight when they're not professionals. I talk about in the Ultimate Athleticism workshop the amateur's advantage. You don't have to do this for a living. If it doesn't feel good, you can just stop doing it. If a professional doesn't feel good, he has to either change his profession or push through the pain.
Yeah.
But the whole concept of pushing through the pain is like so insane when you're just like an amateur.
Yeah. Sure.
The whole advantage is that you can try like a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
You don't have to just eat at one restaurant.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's nothing you have to do.
Nothing you have to do. And your body always adapts to what stimulus you give it.
Yeah.
So that said principle, I think, is so critical.
The set principle. And one of the truest statements is probably use it or lose it when it comes to our bodily.
Is that going to be the sum of this whole thing?
Like,
Probably, right?
yeah.
Use it or lose it?
Use it or lose it. If you want to be fit for a certain thing, you should probably practice that thing. And make sure that you have fun with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are tools so if we think about it from a skill perspective, I like the concept of thinking of strength as a skill. I also think it's important but this is like for my idea of fitness, I think it's important to be able to create tension and generate force in a lot of different positions. I don't think it's necessary for everybody, of course, but I think it's really valuable. So if that is your goal, I think at the very least you want to think of it as a skill, so you're not like rushing through it, and do it at multiple speeds if you're thinking of it like a skill.
Yeah.
I think probably the best progress I made in movement skills was after learning a bunch about music, because there are a lot of different music schools out there, and they teach their students differently. One of the phrases I heard that really stuck with me was they play the song so slow that you can't tell what song it is. So they just have such a strong connection with every single note. They're going so slowly that there's no like jumping past your sticking point. And I think that's like the analogy I would try to make is so many people are focused on like how quick can I lift that weight rather than, exploring this like zone in 3D space. And overhead press is a good example. We're sitting down, it's easy to see. But one of the things we do at the gym is we press a sandbag here and we crush, and so we have the arm pretty much straight in front, and then we also do like a side press or something where it's way out to the side. And if you're always just focusing on lifting it as quick as possible, you're not going to find the areas where you are weak. You're not going to find those gaps in your strength map. So I think with both pushing and pulling, using different speeds and then deliberately deviating from the normal range of motion to make it more of an isometric exploration rather than just being so hyper focused on like, how many pounds was I able to put over my head.
Yeah. Unless you think it's fun chasing that goal.
And I think it's good, but here's the thing. I think even if that is your goal, you're going to get there faster by looking for the weak links rather than ignoring them and, just rushing through it. And, I've seen a lot of people chase a heavy overhead press. So as a good coach, you can see like where it disconnects. It's like good, and then it just is totally disconnected there. So having the patience to go really slow and then also using tempo to your advantage can be really good.
Yeah.
But I think we're going back into a little bit of specificity instead of talking about fitness. But I think I would make the claim that being able to run is really important. Being able to jump is really important. Being able to interact with the ground is really important. And I'm not saying you can't live happily without the ability to run, but the life you're going to live is very different.
Yeah.
So maybe we can go through our top attributes for general fitness from a practical standpoint. Because I think the key lesson that I'm taking away from this is you don't have to do anything. Just don't eat too much food and stay active, and you'll probably be fine. But what are the important ones? Because you and I, we work with a lot of people. We work with some athletes, but we work with mostly just regular folks like ours who probably aren't as passionate about fitness as we are. They're just looking to be fit and healthy and feel good.
Yeah.
What should we do? What should they do?
What should they do?
Yeah, for the folks at home, of course.
For the folks at home. Well, you're of course going to get different answers from different coaches.
No question.
I think you should carry heavy objects frequently. I think you should run fast. I think you should walk. You should probably push something and pull something. Hanging is a really good one.
Sure.
You should get up and down from the ground a few times. I'm a big fan of doing some squatting and some hinging. It doesn't have to be, a traditional back squat and like a standard deadlift. It can be, when I say hinging, anything where you're picking something off the ground. And when I say squatting, essentially anything where you're bending your knees to lower yourself.
So true.
And from there on, there's so many possibilities.
Single leg, lateral, all kinds of different variety.
Or a back squat, if you like back squat.
If you like it, it's great.
Yeah.
I know we usually, I've certainly grown to love having people squat with the sandbag. It's just so practical. It's so safe.
Yeah.
It just works.
Yeah. I personally have like an inner meathead, and I've found myself, if I just keep fueling that and kind of cover all the other more holistic bases, like walking, doing a little bit of rolling around on the ground, doing some hanging, all that, I feel really good and I have a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Um,
That counts for a hell of a lot
yeah.
because if you don't have that fire, you're not going to do anything, and that's the worst thing you can do
Mm.
is nothing.
Yeah. So how about yourself?
I mean, I have a list ready to rock at all
Yeah.
times.
Get it?
Uh, roll,
Yeah.
bounce,
Mm-hmm.
balance.
Mm-hmm. Oh, balance is a good one.
Yeah.
Should have said that.
And balancing would be single leg, being able to move your other three limbs around, and also balancing on the tips of your toes
Mm.
is super powerful. There's that um, Chinese proverb that says we age from the roots up. So I think that's probably one of the most neglected areas, especially at like a normal like
Mm-hmm.
fitness gym or a normal fitness plan. It's like where are the foot and ankle strengthening movements? They're just non-existent
Mm.
because they're I don't know. Bouncing is really important. Being able to bounce is so key. Once again, it's one of those things that moves lymph really well, and just I mean, literally, you are putting a spring in your step. So skipping and shuffling and bouncing, and you can do jump rope or shadow boxing or like
Mm-hmm.
a Jenga or something like that, which I really like. So just staying light on your feet is it really gives you that sense of youth, which
Mm-hmm.
is probably the thing that kills you the most. Is you get this stiff and inflexible body, and then your mind and spirit will sort of reflect that.
Yeah.
So rolling, ideally being able to roll from a standing position to the floor, bouncing and balancing, roll, bounce, balance are the first three. Crawling, climbing, and carrying are the next three. The only thing I would add with the carrying is that you would benefit. I think people benefit from asymmetrical loads and then different positions. So probably bear hug is my favorite. It's the most practical. It's the easiest. But being able to just carry, one heavy thing in one arm or
Mm.
being able to do like a nice farmer's walk feels really good.
Shoulder.
Yeah, up on the shoulder. Overhead carry can be really good too, depending on the person. Or actually, one of the ones I really like is about halfway up.
Oh, yeah. That's
Is
great.
it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Crawling is great because you get such a good opportunity to do different angles for different pushing
Mm-hmm.
exercises, and you're connecting the anterior chain, sometimes lateral chain. There's just a lot of freedom to move there. Hindu push-ups kind of fall in that category. And then climbing is really, I mean, that's what our shoulders were mostly made for,
Mm-hmm.
is being able to hang and climb. And I do squat hangs every single day without fail just because they
Those,
feel so good. It doesn't
yeah.
have to be hard. In fact, my shoulders feel better doing that as more of an exploration than when I was doing like lots and lots of
Mm.
pull-ups on a bar because I have that ability to sink into my hips. It's just a huge bang for your buck, being
Yeah.
able to climb and pull in a wide variety of angles. And then, of course, you'll have these like experts tell you, how you should do a pulling exercise. It's either here or it's here. But actually, the reality is, especially if you go rock climbing, there's going to be a lot of angles that you not only can pull from, but as long as you progress up to it rationally, you will be able to do quite safely. And you'll notice that posture starts to improve, things start to feel a little bit better. So, climbing, just all kinds of pulling exercises at different angles. And then, let's see, roll, bounce, balance, crawl, climb, carry, and then rub, squeeze, and shake. And I think anyone would benefit from doing isometrics. You're building a mind muscle connection. You can do it absolutely anywhere. You can do a prayer pose. You can pull. You can use a towel, which I really like, especially for the neck. Being able to do isometrics with the neck is
Mm-hmm.
probably really important. Um, Shaking, just being able to really loosen everything up is so critical, I think. And then rub is, I don't think I think foam rollers are fine, I guess, but I always think of things in terms of like how much time and effort it actually takes. So if you're gonna sit on a foam roller or do some sort of like soft tissue stuff, I think the best tools for that are your hands,
Mm.
unless you need like a lot more pressure. And if you need lots of pressure, then, maybe there's some other problem in the training that's making it so that's the case. But I think there's a big value in putting your hands on your feet every day, and that kind of leads into some of the rolling stuff that we do.
Mm.
But, you know, I have this little phrase where if you want good hands, uh, just rub yourself for 5 minutes a day. And if you want great hands, rub someone else also for
Mm.
5 minutes a day. And it's, I mean, it sounds silly. It almost sounds like unrelated to everything else we're talking about, but there's a lot of communication that happens without language, and that's coming from a guy who talks a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed. I didn't realize that before. Apparently, I talk a lot. I guess I got a lot to say. But there are a lot of things that are communicated without language, and I think a hand on somebody's shoulder, a shoulder rub or something like that, or even just like rubbing your own wrists, scraping with the forearms and building up that tolerance there, and putting your hands together is really powerful stuff. And I always think of this in terms of how much energy it requires and how
Mm-hmm.
much time it takes. And I would say those are a really good start. I mean, that's plenty really. And then, you know me, I like to swing stuff around. So whether it's a club or a weight on the end of a rope or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many good things to do. But
Yeah.
maybe the last one I would say is try to do some wrestling or acro yoga with another partner, because I do think the best piece of equipment is another human being,
Mm.
without question.
That'll tie into your emotional fitness as well.
Yeah, there's more to health than we can measure, but we are certainly some of the most social and definitely the most emotional animals that that I know of.
Yeah.
That was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Folks, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us.
you.
If you have any questions, you can find us maxshank.com or ambitionathletics.com. This is Anders Rubini at Anders Rubini. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you have any comments, just go ahead and leave us a comment. And thanks again for watching or listening, and we wish you some happy fitness.
Yeah. Have fun.